You know this moment. You've had a breakthrough. Something shifted in a coaching session, in a conversation, in a quiet moment by yourself where something finally clicked. You felt it. The expansion, the sense of this is who I actually am. This is the version of me that's been waiting. You felt more like yourself than you've ever had in months. Hell, maybe years. And then, a few days later, maybe a week, maybe two, you're back. Not all the way back, but enough. The old thought patterns are running again. The old hesitations are back at the wheel. The thing you committed to in the breakthrough moment, oh, the rate you were going to raise, the boundary you were going to hold, the version of yourself you were going to lead from has quietly, almost imperceptibly, been negated back down to something smaller or more familiar. And you don't know exactly how it happened. You just know that the version of you who had the breakthrough feels farther away than it did in the moment. And there's a part of you that wonders, was it even real? Am I just someone who has breakthroughs and then goes back to normal? Is this my pattern? Is this that just who I am? Friend, that is the rubber band effect. And it is one of the most universal experiences in human growth, which means it happens to you. It is not evidence that you can't change. It is evidence that you're human and that change is genuinely hard. Today we're going to talk about why it happens, what it actually it's doing, and most importantly, how to stop letting it win. Wow. Welcome back to Onto Purpose Over a Paycheck podcast. I'm Troy. We are in our next episode, 3 of the 5 for this week, and I'm calling this one Becoming the Next Version of You. That's the theme of this week, right? That's our theme this week is Becoming the Next Version of You. In one of our episodes, we talked about naming the identity gap, the distance between who you are and who your next level requires you to be. In another episode, we went into the beliefs that built the old version of you, where they came from, how to find them, and how to begin building new ones through real, accumulated evidence. But today we deal with something that lives between the belief work and the becoming. Something that derails more people than almost anything else in their growth journey. And that almost nobody talks about honestly. The rubber band effect. Now, the phenomenon where you expand, genuinely, real expand, and then snap back, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, but reliable. And the snapback feels like failure, even when it is actually just a predictable, understandable, very human part of human identity. Change actually works. How it works. So, today is about understanding the mechanism, removing the sham, and putting real tools in your hands so that the next time the rubber band pulls, and it will pull, you know exactly what to do with it. So let's go. Let me explain what actually is happening when the rubber band effect kicks in, because understanding the mechanism is the first step towards not being controlled by it. When you expand, when you take a step into the next level version of yourself, you are by definition moving into unfamiliar territory. New behavior, new beliefs about being tested, new ways of showing up that don't yet have the groove of habit worn into them. And your nervous system, which we talked about in one of the episodes, is constantly monitoring for one thing: safety. Not happiness, not growth, not fulfillment, safety. It's about the safety. And familiar equals safe. And unfamiliar equals potential threat. So every time you step into the new identity, there is a part of your system that is quietly, persistently pulling you back toward what we call the known. Now, that pull is the rubber band. It's not weakness. It's not a lack of commitment. It's not evidence that you don't really want what you say you want. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you from the unknown by returning you to what it recognizes. Now, the rubber band is stronger than willpower, which is why willpower alone will never reliably hold your expansion. You can white knuckle your way through the discomfort for a while, but willpower is a finite resource, and the pull of the familiar is constant. Eventually, willpower loses. Not because you're weak, because you brought the wrong tool. What holds expansion is not willpower, it's identity. It's the degree to which your new version of yourself starts to feel familiar, starts to register as safe. Because you've accumulated through enough experience of it that your nervous system begins to update its map. That process, the map updating, takes longer than a breakthrough. It takes longer than a week of inspired action. It takes consistent, repeated, real world experiences of the new identity until the new starts to feel as known as the old did. The rubber band doesn't disappear overnight, but it gets shorter. Every time you hold the expansion instead of snapping back, every time you stay in the new identity through the discomfort of the pull, the band loses a little tension, a little elasticity, and over time, the new becomes the baseline. That's the goal. Not eliminating the pull, to outlast it. So, the rubber band effect doesn't always look like an obvious retreat. It's sneaky, it's adaptive, but it has three main forms. And I wanted you to be able to recognize those. So I'm going to talk about those. Because the first step is not falling for a pattern, is seeing the pattern clearly. So form one, behavioral snapback. This is the most visible form. You commit to something, a new rate, a new boundary, a new standard for how you're going to show up, and then you negotiate it away. Gave the discount when you said you wouldn't. Answered the email at 11 at night after you said that wasn't for you anymore. Took the client you knew wasn't aligned because the money felt safer than the standard. The behavioral changed back first, and the identity follows it back down. Behavioral snapback is the easiest to catch, but often the hardest to admit, because it usually comes with a very rational sounding justification. Just this once. Oh, this situation is different. It's not the right time to hold on to that line. The justification is not a lie. There will always be a real reason that sounds good. But under the real reason is the pull. And the pull won. Recognizing that it is not self-punishment. It is data. All right, so that was form one. Here's form two, mental snapback, the mental snapback. This one is more eternal and harder to catch. You haven't changed your behavior yet, but the thought patterns have reverted. The self-doubt is running loud again. The old story is back at the microphone. You're second-guessing the direction, minimizing the progress you made, comparing yourself to everyone who seems further along, and quietly concluding that maybe you were fooling yourself back there in the breakthrough moment. Maybe this isn't really possible. Maybe that version of you wasn't who you actually are. It was just a feeling. Mental snapback is particularly dangerous because it precedes behavioral snapback. It's the preparation for giving up. the internal renegotiation that happens before you change course outwardly. If you can catch it here at the thought level, you can interrupt the pattern before it becomes action. All right, so that was form number 2. Form number 3, environmental snapback. This is the least talked about and arguably the most powerful. Your environment, the people around you, the space you occupy, the conversations you have regularly, the content you consume, the communities you belong to, is a constant mirror of your current identity. And when your identity starts to shift, your environment will often push back, not maliciously, just because systems, including social systems, tend toward homeostasis. They return to what was. The people who knew the old version of you will treat you as that version. They'll make jokes that assume the old identity. They'll express subtle discomfort with your change. They'll ask questions that presuppose you're still who you are or were. And if you don't have anchors, people, spaces, content, community, that reflect and reinforce the new identity, the environmental weight of the old one will slowly pull you back. This is why who you spend time with matters so much during a season of becoming. Not because the old relationships aren't real or valuable, but because environment is always exerting a gravitational force on identity. And if all your gravity is pulled towards the old version of you, you will have to work extremely hard to maintain the new. Make sure some of your gravity is pulling in the direction you're growing. I want to pause on something before we get to the tools, because there's a response to the rubber band effect that I see almost universally. And it is the response that keeps people stuck the longest. Shame. When the snapback happens, the most common internal response is not curiosity or compassion or even disappointment. It's shame. The story of, I knew I couldn't do it. I always do this. I had the breakthrough and then I blew it. Other people sustain their growth and I just keep going in circles. There's something wrong with me. I'm not the person I thought I was becoming. I don't deserve the next level. And here's what shame does to the process of growth. It stops it. Not permanently, but thoroughly. Because shame contracts. It shrinks you back into the smallest, most defended version of yourself. It makes trying again feel dangerous, because if you try again and snap back again, the shame will be even worse. So you stop trying. Or you try half-heartedly with the part of yourself already braced for the failure, which makes the failure more likely. Shame is the most expensive response to the rubber band effect. It costs you time, momentum, and the willingness to get back up and try again. And it does all of that while presenting itself as appropriate accountability. Like, I should feel bad about this. I earned this feeling. This is what I deserve for not holding it together. It's not. The snapback is not a moral failure. It is a mechanical one. The mechanics of how nervous systems respond to unfamiliar territory. It happens to every person who is genuinely growing. Not some people, every person. The difference between the people who eventually break through and the people who stay stuck is not that the first group ever snaps back. It's that they respond to the snapback with curiosity instead of shame. And they get back up faster. So, if you've been carrying shame about your pattern, about the time you got close and went back, the breakthroughs that facaded, the version of yourself you touched and then lost, I want to offer you something different. Compassion. For the version of you that was trying, that is always trying, that is human and therefore returns to safety when the unfamiliar gets too loud. That version of you is not the enemy. That version of you is the starting point. And starting points are not shameful. They are just where you begin. All right. Now let's talk tools. Because compassion is necessary, but it isn't sufficient. You also need a strategy. So here are 5 things that actually work when the rubber band pulls. Tool number 1, name the pull in real time. The moment you feel the snapback happening, the familiar thought pattern returning, the behavioral negotiation starting, the old story getting loud, name it out loud if you can, or in writing if you can't. Say it. This is the rubber band. This is the pull toward familiar. This is not a sign that I was wrong to expand. This is the predictable response to growth. Naming it creates distance. It shifts you from being inside the experience where it feels like truth to observing it, where you can see it as a pattern, and patterns can be interrupted. Truths cannot. Name it before it decides for you. Tool number 2, return to the anchor. I gave you the assignment of writing the descriptions of your next level self. That description is your anchor. When the snapback comes, read it. Not to motivate yourself with inspiration, to remind yourself of the direction, to reconnect with the version of you that wrote it and meant it. The anchor doesn't need to feel exciting in the moment of the pull. It just needs to exist so you can have something real to return to. This is also why I keep saying write things down, not in your phone notes. Somewhere you actually find it and read it. The anchor only works if you can access it when the pull is loud. Tool number 3, take one action from the new identity within 24 hours of the snapback. Not a big action, not a dramatic gesture. One real specific action that the next level version of you would take. Send the email, make the call, hold the boundary for one more day, post the thing. Say the true thing in the conversation you've been avoiding. The reason the 24-hour matters is this. The longer you stay in snapback territory, the more familiar it becomes again. And the more familiar it becomes, the harder it is to leave. You want to reduce the duration of the snapback. One action within 24 hours is how you do that. It is not about perfection. It's not about letting the old identity fully reestablish itself before you re-engage the new one. Okay? Tool number 4, audit your environment. Ask yourself honestly, who and what in my current environment is reflecting the old identity back to me? And who and what, if anything, is reflecting the new one? If the answer to the second question is not much, that's urgent information. You need at least some gravitational pull in the direction you're growing. A community, a mentor, a peer who is becoming alongside you. Content that reinforces the new story. Spaces where the next level version of you is the normal, not the exception. You cannot sustain a new identity in an environment that only recognizes the old one. The environment will win eventually. Make sure yours is working with your becoming, not against it. All right, tool number 5, celebrate the noticing. This one sounds small, and it is not. Every time you notice the rubber band before it fully pulls you back, every time you catch the snapback in process instead of after the fact, that is a win. That is growth. That is the metacognition muscle, the metacognitive muscle getting stronger. The goal is not to never snap back. The goal is to notice it sooner, recover faster, and extend the time you spend in the new identity before the pull comes. Celebrate the noticing, because noticing is the becoming of choosing, and choosing, repeated enough times, is how identity changes. I want to tell you about a specific season where I had to learn the hard way how to hold expansion instead of snapping back. I had made a decision about my coaching rates, a real decision. Not I should probably do this decision, but the kind of decision that felt aligned in the right and like the next level version of me who was already living it. I set the new rate. I had the first conversation at the new rate. It went well. The client said yes. I felt like the version of myself I was becoming. And then the next inquiry came in, and something in me, without even consciously deciding it, started building a case for why this particular client deserved a different rate. They were earlier in their journey. The timing wasn't ideal for them. I didn't want money to be the thing that kept someone from getting help. All of it true. All of it also the rubber band. The old belief. I have to earn the right to be here. My value is provisional, pulling me back through the most efficient route available. A story that sounded like generosity. I almost talked myself into it, and then I caught it. Not dramatically. I was writing out my response to the inquiry, and I stopped and I thought, wait, whose decision is this? Mine or the old stories? Is it the actually about this client's circumstances, or is this about my discomfort with holding a standard that the new version of me set? I held the rate, and the client said yes. And something settled in me that hadn't been settled before. Not triumph, something quieter than that. More like, oh, the new identity just held. It held under pressure, and it held. That's what that feels like. That feeling, the feeling of holding, is what you're building toward, not the absence of pull, the experience of holding through it. Because every time you hold, the new identity gets a little bit more weight, a little more solidity, a little more like home. And eventually, the hold becomes the default, the expansion becomes the floor. That's what you're working toward. And you are closer than the snapback is telling you. All right, here are the takeaways from today's episode. The rubber band effect is not evidence that you can't change. It's evidence that you are changing, because you can only snap back from a place you've actually expanded to. The snapback means you got there. The work now is learning to stay. So your activation this week, I want you to identify where the rubber band has been pulling you most recently. Be specific. Not I've been struggling, but exactly what form the snapback has been taking. Behavioral, mental, or environmental. Name it plainly. Then pick 2 of the 5 tools I gave you, just 2, and commit to applying them specifically to the snapback point this week. Not all 5, 2, small enough to actually do, real enough to generate evidence. And if you catch the pull happening in real time this week, if you notice the rubber band before it fully wins, I want you to write that down too, because the noticing is the win, and you deserve to count your wins accurately. All right, we've got our next episode coming up, but in it, it's the one I've been building towards since we opened this new theme, expanding without self-abandonment. We're going to talk about how to grow into something new without betraying who you are at the core. How to hold the expansion and still be you. Make sure you're continuing to follow. If you are new to it and you caught this episode, please make sure that you are following this podcast. Make sure that you leave a rating, leave a comment. Let us know how this is working for you. What are you starting to notice? Where is your growth? And what are you basically working on? I'd love to hear, just some testimonials if you want. Also, make sure you check out my link tree. It's in the show notes, has all my information. has all my ebooks, it has all my resources, everything you can do. I would love for you to come check it out. And again, share this episode out with anyone who may need to hear this message, because you will always support someone or help someone who needs to hear this message, especially the rubber band effect. If you have any friends talking about it, make sure you share this out, because this is probably one of the most important episodes, is the idea about the rubber band effect, because it's a real thing, friend. It's a real thing. So make sure you share this out. All right, my friend, thank you so much. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. And as I always say, I'm Troy. I am your master coach. This is Unto Purpose Over Paycheck podcast, and I will talk to you soon.